What if one of the largest infrastructure projects in Australian history wasn't happening on the coast, but 40 kilometers inland? Right now, Western Sydney is being rebuilt with a $150 billion plan that includes a brand new airport, metro lines, entire new suburbs, green corridors, and a city designed from scratch. Western Sydney is already home to over 2.7 million people. It's one of Australia's fastest-growing regions, but it's also been one of the most overlooked when it comes to infrastructure, transport, and long-term planning. For years, residents here have faced longer commutes, fewer job opportunities close to home, and limited access to public services compared to those living closer to Sydney's central business district. The divide between the eastern suburbs and the west is not just geographic, it's economic and social. The $150 billion rebuild aims to change that. The goal is simple on paper: create a 30-minute city where most people can reach work, school, or essential services within half an hour. But the plan goes further than just building infrastructure. It aims to support industries like aerospace, advanced manufacturing, logistics, and agribusiness, all centered around a new city called Bradfield, right next to the new airport. Let's start with the airport. Western Sydney International, officially named the Nancy Bird Walton Airport, is not just another airport. It's the centerpiece of this entire transformation. Built at Badgerys Creek, about 61 kilometers from the Sydney CBD, this airport is designed to operate 24/7. Unlike Kingsford Smith Airport, there's no curfew. That changes the dynamics of aviation in the region entirely. Construction started in 2018. The first flights are expected to take off by 2026. In its early years, the airport will handle about 10 million passengers annually. But by the 2060s, that number is expected to grow to over 80 million. That puts it in the same league as some of the busiest airports in the world. But how does an airport help fix the imbalance in Western Sydney? Job creation is a big part of it. During construction, the government estimated around 11,000 jobs would be supported. Even more conservative figures put it closer to 3,000. Once the airport opens, it's expected to support over 35,000 jobs by the mid-2030s, ranging from baggage handlers to logistics managers to IT specialists. Longer term, that number could reach 60,000 as the surrounding business parks fill out. And a lot of those jobs are being targeted at local workers. More than half of the current construction workforce has come from Western Sydney, including a high percentage of apprentices and trainees. The airport is also designed with freight in mind. That's important because Western Sydney sits between Australia's biggest agriculture zones and the export routes to Asia. The airport's 24/7 status allows for overnight freight movements, which makes it more attractive to logistics firms. Qantas has already committed to setting up a major freight hub there. But not everyone is convinced. The airport sits in what used to be bushland and farmland. Construction required clearing significant areas of native vegetation. To address that, a conservation plan has been set up to protect endangered ecosystems in the region, including creating new reserves. Critics argue that the loss still outweighs the gain. Cultural heritage is another factor. The discovery of thousands of Aboriginal cultural artifacts early in construction forced planners to rethink how they can preserve Indigenous heritage. Still, it's only one piece of the plan. To make this airport work, the entire region needs to be reconnected. An airport on its own can't transform an entire region. It needs strong connections. That's why a large share of the $150 billion plan goes into roads, rail lines, and new transit corridors designed to tie Western Sydney together and link it back to the rest of the city. The biggest piece of this network is the Sydney Metro, Western Sydney Airport Line. It's a 23-kilometer driverless metro running from St. Mary's through the airport and into the new Bradfield city centre. 6 stations are currently under construction, and the line is scheduled to open in April 2027. For residents in places like Penrith, St. Mary's, or Orchard Hills, this metro line changes everything. A trip to the airport becomes a single, direct connection. Workers in Bradfield won't need to drive, and companies deciding where to invest tend to look first at areas with fast, reliable transport. This is one of the reasons the Aerotropolis began attracting interest from manufacturers, logistics firms, and tech companies before the airport even opened. But the metro is only one side of the equation. To support the airport and thousands of new homes, the government is also upgrading Western Sydney's road network at a speed the region has not seen before. The M12 motorway is the headline project, a 16-kilometer toll-free highway linking the airport directly to the M7. Scheduled to open by 2026, the M12 will handle much of the early traffic: passengers, freight trucks, and workers traveling to the airport precinct. Other roads have already been widened or rebuilt. The Northern Road now carries 4 lanes in each direction across several suburbs. Bringley Road has been upgraded to handle growing development in the south. Major corridors like Mamre Road and Elizabeth Drive are being expanded to support industrial zones and new suburbs forming around the Aerotropolis. All of this reduces pressure on older east-west roads that have been choking under rising demand for years. Western Sydney is also getting new rapid bus connections. A $200 million program is rolling out zero-emission electric buses linking Penrith, Liverpool, Campbelltown, and Blacktown directly to the airport. There's also a long-term plan for a rapid transit corridor along 15th Avenue between Liverpool and the airport, designed so it can eventually support light rail. And then there's future-proofing. Governments have already spent hundreds of millions securing land for the South West Rail extension, which could one day connect Bradfield to Leppington and then to Campbelltown. They're doing this early to avoid the kind of land acquisition battles that usually slow large transport projects. But transport is not only about convenience, it's also about safety. Western Sydney's northwest has faced repeated floods in recent years. To avoid trapping residents in low-lying suburbs, the government is raising and widening evacuation routes, including Townsend Road and Garfield Road. These upgrades are designed to make sure residents can leave quickly even during severe rain events. So yes, the new airport is the anchor, but this growing web of metro lines, motorways, buses, and future rail corridors is what actually makes the Western Sydney rebuild function. Without it, the entire plan collapses under its own weight. However, transport upgrades only matter if people have places to live, work, and meet the daily needs of their families. Western Sydney's population is rising faster than almost anywhere else in the country, and projections show it could pass 3 million residents within the next 2 decades. That creates one of the biggest housing tasks Australia has taken on. A large part of the $150 billion rebuild focuses on delivering tens of thousands of new homes across the western Parkland City area. These are not isolated suburbs on the fringe. The plan tries to fix the mistakes of earlier decades, when housing was pushed outward without schools, hospitals, or transport to support it. Instead, Western Sydney's new communities are designed around mixed-use centers, rail stations, and parkland. In the Northwest Growth Area, suburbs like Schofields, Riverstone, and Marsden Park will eventually hold roughly 250,000 residents once development is complete. The Southwest Growth Area, stretching around Bringelly, Leppington, and the Aerotropolis, is experiencing similar growth. Developers are working on large master-planned communities, some with more than 1,000 homes each, featuring local shops, bike paths, and parks. One example is a $1.2 billion development near the airport that will include roughly 1,200 homes, schools, and community spaces. Penrith alone is getting more than 2,000 new apartments, marking the shift from suburban sprawl to higher density living near transport. But the plan is not just about adding housing supply. It focuses heavily on livability. Under the Western Sydney City deal, around $190 million has already gone into playgrounds, sports fields, community centers, and public squares. These amenities matter because they shape how new neighborhoods grow. Areas with parks and local facilities tend to build stronger communities and feel more cohesive over time. There's also a strong focus on culture and identity. Western Sydney is one of Australia's most diverse regions, and that diversity now shapes local planning. New public art installations, multicultural centers, and festival spaces are being added into the early stages of development rather than years later. If the airport is the anchor of the rebuild, then the Western Sydney Aerotropolis is the engine that's meant to power the region for decades. This is not a single business park. It's an 11,000-hectare zone plan to support thousands of companies across aerospace, advanced manufacturing, logistics, agribusiness, defense, and education. At the center of it is Bradfield City Centre, Often described as Australia's first major city built from scratch in more than a century, the New South Wales government has committed more than $1 billion to kickstart its core infrastructure, including a landmark facility known as the Advanced Manufacturing Research Facility. This is where engineers and companies will test prototypes, build components, and train a new workforce for high-skill industries. Bradfield is expected to support around 20,000 jobs by the mid-2030s, with far more once the precinct matures. Across the broader Aerotropolis, government projections estimate 200,000 jobs long-term. That scale puts it into the same league as the industrial corridors built around major airports in countries like South Korea and the United States. Education is a major pillar of the Aerotropolis ecosystem. Several universities, including Western Sydney University, the University of Sydney, and the University of Wollongong, are collaborating on a shared STEM-focused campus, often referred to as a multiversity. For students in Western Sydney, this means access to high-skill training close to home instead of relying on long commutes into the CBD. So now the question is, how Western Sydney compares to global megaprojects? A $150 billion rebuild doesn't happen often, so it helps to look at what other countries are doing and see where Western Sydney fits in the global picture. Cities around the world are attempting similar transformations, but each takes a different approach. One of the most talked about examples is Neom in Saudi Arabia, an enormous, highly planned region with a budget far larger than Western Sydney's, but Neom is being built in a remote desert with almost no existing communities. Western Sydney's situation is different. It's about upgrading a region where millions already live, while adding new centers on top. That makes the planning more complicated, but also more grounded in real demand. A more direct comparison is South Korea's Songdo International Business District, built near Incheon Airport. It was designed as a high-tech, master-planned smart city. Songdo has advanced transport systems, massive green spaces, and large business districts. Features Western Sydney is also aiming for through Bradfield and the Aerotropolis. The difference is speed. Songdo struggled early because companies and residents moved in slower than expected. Western Sydney planners are trying to avoid that by building transport first and relying on a population that's already growing rapidly. Europe provides another useful example, the Grand Paris Express, a multi-billion euro expansion of the Paris metro. Its entire goal is to reduce travel times between outer suburbs and job centers. Western Sydney's transport upgrades follow the same logic, shift the focus away from a single CBD and create multiple strong centers. Paris shows how good transport can reshape where people live and work, but it also shows how delays and cost overruns can slow momentum. Western Sydney faces the same risk, especially with metro construction. In North America, large-scale master plan districts tend to be smaller. New York's Hudson Yards, for example, cost around $25 billion. Big, but still small compared to what's being built in Western Sydney. Few Western cities attempt a full regional rebuild at this scale. So while Western Sydney may not be the largest transformation in the world, it is one of the most ambitious attempts to reshape an existing metropolitan region. But there are reasonable questions as this unfolds. Will housing stay affordable as demand increases? Can the Aerotropolis reach its job targets fast enough? Will environmental protections hold as construction accelerates? And most importantly, will the benefits reach the whole region, not just the areas closest to the airport? These are the questions that will shape Western Sydney's future over the next 10 to 20 years. What's clear right now is that the momentum is real. Construction is underway, homes are rising, roads are being widened, and a brand new airport, something many thought would never happen, is almost ready. So what do you think? Is this rebuild the right direction for Australia? Will Western Sydney become the country's next major economic center? Or will the scale of the plan create new challenges we haven't fully accounted for yet? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.